Welcome to Boxing During Dinner back here at RANDAZZO'S Little Italy. And we're here with David, as usual, who has a special guest here.
Well, we have a special guest. Vivek Wallace from Eastside Boxing came down from Broward County to spend some time with us tonight. And I will
and the fight fans know who he is.
Well, they know him more than they know us. And I will reveal also that my first introduction to Vivek was discovering him on Facebook on accident one day. It's probably about 3 years ago now. And sending him a private message and saying, "You're my favorite boxing writer, and I hope you keep up the work." And now he's here at the table having dinner with us.
That's not what you told him. It was a little more
That's exactly
inappropriate.
Well, we've become fans of each other, so let's keep. I love the show. So
Thanks.
Well, we're here to talk about one fight and one fight only, which is Carlos Molina and Ishe Smith. Carlos Molina finally a champion, and that made me very, very happy.
Say the happiest guy in the world had to be this one over here.
Obviously, the running joke on the show is that I'm a huge Carlos Molina fan, and after predicting way back when that he was going to be Kermit Cintron rather easy, and I actually saw him a couple of days before the fight, and I told him, Carlos, I have this boxing show, a friend of mine and I, Boxing During Dinner, and I'm a huge fan, and win the title because it's going to make me very happy. And he's like, "Oh, thanks, man. I got to watch. What show is it?" So he was really cool.
If you're watching, Carlos Molina, biggest fan over here, and thanks.
Exactly. So I guess now that we're getting started, we're going to...
This is a good moment. RANDAZZO'S knows when to bring the food. We've
RANDAZZO'S
got over here the
great
chicken rigatoni with pasta vodka sauce, chicken parmesan over there, some spaghetti underneath, and a great
it's food
marinara.
for all of us and then some. We need to invite more people. But the big fight we need to talk about is Canelo Mayweather, obviously, which was this past weekend. All the build-up, all the hype, and people say it didn't live up to it. But I disagree. I was in Vegas, and the atmosphere for this fight was like nothing I've ever seen in my days covering boxing. I never covered Julio Cesar Chavez. I'm a little too young for that. I would have been like 10 years old heading out to the Meldrick Taylor fight. But the fans out there, with the Mexican fans with the headbands that said Canelo, the T-shirts, the merchandise, then all the people with the Money Team merchandise. It was an incredible sight to see.
Yeah, I think it was an incredible atmosphere. The numbers speak for themselves when we look at the projections already. The gate money, highest gate money in history pretty much. I think they speak for themselves. But I think you really had the two best fighters under 160 pounds in the world too. So, and under them you had two of the other best fighters. Right. So incredible card, definitely.
I can't remember any time really, and again, I'm probably like Armando in the sense that I wasn't around for, several generations of fights, but when do you pack an entire arena for a weigh-in? I mean, I don't think there's a fight in the, of all this year that can compare to the energy, that was just at the weigh-in.
And there was as much energy as there would have been in a fight. I mean, it was
that's what
ridiculous.
I'm saying. There's no fight that could even compare to their weigh-in. Yeah. The card did not disappoint. I don't think. I mean, sure, Carlos Molina and Ishe Smith was going to be a snoozer, according to traditional fans, and it probably lived up to that. A lot of clinching and grabbing, but Carlos Molina did what he does best, and it's make fights dirty and win them. Well, he doesn't always win them according to judges, but then the Lucas Matisse-Danny Garcia fight was so compelling to me because you felt the script maybe changing a couple times in there, but we have to eat crow again, man. We continue to lay down on Danny Garcia, and that kid steps up to the plate every single time, makes adjustments. People questioned his chin, maybe because of the way Judah tested it at the end of the fight.
Right.
But his chin stood up to some serious shots from Matisse. He outboxed him. He is world class.
And not only with us. I mean, the odds were in favor of Matisse. Everybody thought Matisse was going to win. I thought he was going to win. Danny Garcia proved that he's in the conversation of top pound-for-pound fighters in the world. Yeah. Let me tell you, Vivek, this is the first time I've ever met Angel Garcia. And before this trip, I was like, man, boxing doesn't need a guy like that. Trash talker. I like the guy. Like, I really like him now.
The thing with Angel, he's an underrated trainer. Like, people don't realize that when you look
very good trainer.
When you look at the relationship he has with his son, he's a lunatic, but it's no different from what Mayweather and Roger have with their people. But it's a family bond, and that's who they are. But that's what makes them so good too. So
if all things, I know we're going to talk about this at some point about who Mayweather's next opponent should be. even just for the all access, I would pay to see Garcia versus Mayweather to have those two fathers on
That's
camera.
great for TV, but we'll talk a little later about who we think that Mayweather's gonna fight. But the fight itself, Vivek, what did you think about Floyd Mayweather's performance? Obviously, at 36, you expect this guy's skills to diminish just a bit, and they don't. I don't think it was his best performance ever, as a couple of people said. I think that's against Diego Corrales. But what did you think about his performance?
I think you could rate it as one of his best.
The
thing is, I'm looking at the big picture, and I think when you look at his age and the fact that he pulled that off against a guy so dangerous, so much younger at this age. I don't care what sport it is, what profession it is, to see a guy perform at that level at that age, to me, is incredible. But in the beginning, I think he was a little tense. His dad spoke to him a little bit about that. But even when he was tense, he performed to perfection. I mean, he executed flawlessly. I can't say enough about his effort, man. I thought he was incredible. Incredible.
Fighter.
The whole conversation about the best ever continues to come up every time Mayweather is about to fight, and then after he destroys an opponent, every single time. And you'll never be able to put two guys from different generations in the ring against each other. People are always going to say Sugar Ray Robinson had better offense than Mayweather. People will argue maybe Mayweather had better defense, and you'll hear the comparisons with Sugar Ray Leonard, or could he have stood up to a Tommy Hearns attack? What I think makes Mayweather unique across any generation is the fact that he has such nuances in his game that adjust every single fight to take away what you have.
Yes.
That's not necessarily him defending your punch. That's not necessarily him punching you. That's him taking away what you're going to do, and that's not showing up by him throwing something or blocking a punch. And no one else in the history of boxing, I would argue, has done it the way he does.
Now, do you think Canelo's game plan was flawed? Because going into the fight, I thought he was going to be a little more aggressive. Now, he was content with trying to box against the best boxer in the world, which is a mistake even in saying it. I mean, that sentence doesn't sound right. You don't box with the best boxer in the world. Do you think he took that plan that he had against Austin Trout and just figured, heck, it worked then, I could use it against Floyd Mayweather?
Actually, he addressed that with the media. He wanted to be more aggressive. But every time he attempted to, I think Floyd knew how to take away the best way to explain what Floyd does. I think Oscar said it better than I ever could have. When they were here in Miami back in 2007 to promote their fight, I was talking to Oscar, and I asked him, what is it about Floyd? And he said, you know what? You can have him right where you want him, but the moment you go to engage, he's no longer there, but you're exactly where he needs you to be for him to engage with you.
Right.
And that's the big mystery of Floyd. You can have him where you want him. I think Marquez did. I think Cotto did. A lot of those guys did. But can you keep him there long enough to do damage for 12 rounds? No. And I don't think anyone can, to be honest.
That's something I like to say. Again, I think the biggest winner, maybe outside of Mayweather, was Miguel Cotto, because it seems as if he's the only guy who's been able to make Mayweather even appear vulnerable, and that's still a fight that Mayweather won 9-3 on any logical person's scorecard. When you're defeating your opponents by that degree, and the fight they say showed you were slipping, and you still won 9 rounds, who's going to touch him?
Now, the question, who's going to touch him? Who is going to touch him? I mean, who's next for Floyd Mayweather? There are names out there. You would think Austin Trout has to be in the mix. He's a 154-pounder, former champion, slick fighter. I don't think that'll be the next fight. There's Amir Khan, who I cursed on the show, and he'll never win again, thanks to me, just because of me. The day I declared Amir Khan a top 5 pound-for-pound fighter is when his career went to crap. And Danny Garcia is another name. And then, then there's other guys, Martinez and stuff. I'm of the opinion it's going to be Amir Khan. It's an easy fight to make. Amir Khan probably needs this more than Floyd. So, and knowing that this fight can be as much of a success on pay-per-view as this Canelo fight, what other way of Floyd Mayweather capitalizing on his fame, on making money, than to making this fight at Wembley Stadium in London?
Yeah, I mean, he said since he fought Hatton, that's a fight he wants in Wembley. I think it makes sense. The only thing is, and I guess I shouldn't say this, but the reality, every time Khan gets in a situation for that fight, he loses. You know,
Right.
and Devin Alexander won't be an easy night out. So
I'd cancel that fight immediately.
just like Andre
just for
Berto.
that payday.
You know, there's a number of angles to consider here. You know, one, what is the best money fight? To me, that's probably Amir Khan. But what's maybe the best for his legacy? Well, you know, we were discussing before the show, Sergio Martinez, as recently as a fight ago, was weighing in, 157 pounds for a middleweight fight. Is that something that becomes maybe a catch weight around 156, 155, a weight that Martinez probably could still make, where Mayweather has a chance to make history and become the lineal champion in 3 weight classes at the same time, which no one else has ever done? That to me is a legacy fight. But what actually happens, is anybody's guess. I'm going to throw my name in the Amir Khan hat as well, but with a very big if relating to the Devin Alexander situation.
And you can't fault Floyd for this. And I mean, every time you watch All Access and you see what he could do, what he could pull money-wise, I mean, the guy made almost $42 million for this fight, and that's just to show up in the ring. You would think it's the Amir Khan fight instead of the legacy fight. The legacy fight could probably come later on. Because Amir Khan, like you were saying, Amir Khan might take the next fight, and he may not be there for that Wembley Stadium fight.
yeah.
And you'll never sell a Devin Alexander Floyd Mayweather fight the way you would an Amir Khan fight. Sorry.
You can't tell that.
That's a reality.
That'll have to be a CBS fight. If he fights Devin Alexander for open,
Which is a
open
possibility.
TV.
It's a very real possibility that could happen at some point.
Now you mentioned Sergio Martinez, and you also mentioned Miguel Cotto. 2 names that I think are out there for Sergio, for Saul Canelo Alvarez for his next fight. Canelo, as much as people want to say he didn't look good, I didn't think he looked bad. The first few rounds were he made it kind of interesting. The kid showed he could box. He's a good puncher, good fighter. Has the persona to become a huge star in this game. And I think Saul Canelo Alvarez is as marketable now as he was before this fight.
Yeah.
And I think a fight against Miguel Cotto, or even against a Maravilla Martinez, would sell out in Vegas, would bring all the fans, and are 2 very winnable fights for him.
Yeah, Miguel Cotto, those 2 would be an incredible fight. Cinco de Mayo type fight, Mexican versus Puerto Rico.
That
whole
huge
storyline. You can't make a bigger fight, I think, for Canelo right now. And he's in a perfect position to capitalize on his greatness. I think he's going to be the tomorrow, the future of the sport in many ways, I think,
It's an interesting question now. Of course, Miguel Cotto has to get past Delvin Rodriguez, but this is a crossroads fight now. Before this fight this past weekend, people would have said Canelo's rising and Cotto's falling. You look at their performances next to him, people are still going to say Miguel Cotto looks better. And in addition to that, if Cotto looks good against Delvin Rodriguez, what was once considered maybe a mismatch in favor of Canelo, people might now say, well, Canelo just lost to Mayweather, Cotto just looked pretty good against Delvin Rodriguez, and he looked better against Mayweather comparably. That might even be a more sellable fight now than it would have been if they had made it before they made the Mayweather fight. So that's, I think absolutely that's a very winnable scenario. Fight-wise, I still have to favor Canelo, as much as I'm a Miguel Cotto fan.
I will go with Canelo as well.
But I think it's a much more sellable fight even now.
Now there is food here, so we do need to eat, and we could probably sit here and talk boxing all day.
But let's get some parting thoughts from Vivek before we run out of here.
I do want to ask one more question,
there it is.
which could be the parting shot. We mentioned who Floyd Mayweather will fight next, which we pretty much all agree is probably Amir Khan. But is there anybody out there who could give Floyd problems? I don't even want to say win, because they probably won't beat him, but could give Floyd some trouble?
Short of the Klitschko brothers, no. Honestly, the guys, he's heads and shoulders above everybody, man. I can't. The guy I thought would give him his biggest problem, he just made it look like an amateur.
Absolutely, me too.
I don't have anyone else. What do you guys think?
Well, Floyd, if you're watching, we're impressed.
Now, with our track record, if Floyd fights Danny Garcia, we pick Floyd unanimously. Watch out. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly.
But we'll catch you next week on Boxing During Dinner.